Today, we're diving deep into the world of digital evidence and figuring out India's cybercrime laws. In a world where we basically live online, understanding your digital footprint isn't just a neat trick, it's absolutely essential. So let's get into it. Just think about it for a second. Your phone, your laptop, even your smartwatch. They're not just gadgets, right? They are these silent, ever-present witnesses to your life. They're logging your messages, your locations, your purchases. And in the eyes of the law, every single one of those little digital breadcrumbs can become crucial evidence. And look, this isn't just some abstract idea. The sheer scale of cybercrime in India is pretty staggering. The National Crime Record Bureau tells us the number of pending cases is just massive. I mean, some states like Karnataka have become real hotspots, making up more than 16% of all cases in the country. This is a problem that's affecting millions of people right now, as we speak. So how do we wrap our heads around all this? Well, here's our plan. First up, we're going to break down what digital evidence actually is. Then, we'll look at how India's laws are trying to keep up. We'll even get into a pretty fascinating Supreme Court debate, cover the must-know steps for reporting cybercrime, and then finish up with some tips on how to protect yourself. Okay, let's start at square one. What exactly are we talking about when we say digital evidence? Turns out it's probably a lot more than you think. The Information Technology Act gives us a really straightforward definition. Basically, if it's info that matters to a case and it's stored on a device, it's digital evidence. It's a super broad definition, but that's what makes it so powerful. It covers pretty much every single thing we do online. And just look at how wide that net really is. We're talking about everything. The emails you send, the posts you comment on, your phone's GPS tracking where you go. Yep, even your late-night browsing history and those online shopping sprees. All of it can tell a story and be used as proof in a court of law. Okay, so now we know what it is, but how does the legal system actually deal with it? As you can probably guess, India's laws have had to play a really fast game of catch-up with technology. This timeline really shows you the whole journey. Back in 1872, the whole idea of digital evidence would have sounded like something out of a sci-fi novel. But then, the year 2000 hits. That was the game changer. The IT Act finally gave electronic records a real legal standing. From there, you see the courts shaping how it's used, leading all the way up to this massive shift in 2023. Now this is really important. Look at the change in status. Before, digital evidence was considered secondary. Think of it like a photocopy. You had to jump through all these extra hoops to prove it was a true copy. It just wasn't seen as being as reliable. But the new law, it elevates digital records to primary evidence. And that is a huge deal. It means a digital file can have the same legal power as an original paper document, which makes it way more potent in court. So the million-dollar question is, how do you prove a digital file is the real deal and hasn't been messed with? Well, that's where Section 65B comes in. It's basically a rule that says you need a special certificate signed by someone in charge of the device confirming everything was working right. You can think of it like a digital document's official birth certificate. It vouches for its authenticity. But this one little certificate ended up causing a huge legal showdown. It created this fascinating tug of war that went all the way to the Supreme Court. It all started back in 2015 with a case called Anver P. The Supreme Court laid down a really strict rule. No certificate, no evidence. Simple as that. It was seen as this absolutely critical, non-negotiable step. But then, just a few years later, in the Shafi Muhammad case, the court kind of softened its stance. They said, well, hold on. What if you can't get the certificate because you don't even have the device? They ruled that in some cases, the requirement could be skipped. And that, as you can imagine, created a whole lot of confusion. Finally, in 2020, the Supreme Court put an end to the back and forth in the Arjun Panditrao Kudakar case. They sided with the original, stricter rule. So the final word is now crystal clear. That certificate from Section 65B, it's mandatory. It's a prerequisite. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay, so understanding the law is great. But what do you actually do if you're the one who becomes a victim of cybercrime? Let's switch gears and get practical. This is your first response plan. The single most important thing to remember is this website, cybercrime.gov.in. This is the government's official central hub for reporting any and all kinds of cybercrime, whether it's financial fraud or online harassment. Seriously, you should bookmark it. Now, before you jump onto the portal, it's a really good idea to get your ducks in a row. You're going to need a soft copy of your ID. the specific details of what happened, when and where, and any proof you have, like screenshots or emails. And if it's money related, get those transaction details ready. Being prepared just makes the whole process go so much smoother. And here's how it works in 4 pretty simple steps. First, and this is so important, preserve all the evidence. Do not delete anything. Next, go to the portal and set up an account. Then you file the complaint, filling in all those details you gathered. And finally, once you submit, you'll get an acknowledgement number that you can use to track your case.
Reporting a crime is crucial, but you know what's even better? Prevention. So let's wrap up by talking about your digital armor and where India stands on all this globally.
Now, on the world stage, India has actually chosen its own path. It hasn't signed the big international treaty on cybercrime, the Budapest Convention, because the feeling is that it's a bit too centered on Europe. Instead, India is pushing for a new, more inclusive treaty led by the UN, one that respects every country's sovereignty and gives all nations an equal voice.
And for you, personally, here are 5 tips that are pretty much non-negotiable. Use strong, unique passwords for everything. Turn on 2-factor authentication on every account that offers it. Keep your antivirus software up to date. Be super skeptical of weird links you get in emails or messages. And please, please do not do your online banking on public Wi-Fi. These simple habits are your absolute best line of defense.
So here's the bottom line. Every single thing we do online, every click, every tap, it creates a little data point, a clue. And in this digital world, that collection of clues tells our story. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what story is your digital evidence going to tell? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.